We're joined by Nape Senong from the Youth Capital Advocacy campaign now to share his views or reaction to the budget speech. Good evening, Nape. Thank you very much for joining us on the public broadcast. And let's start with just your reaction to that 0.5 percentage point increase of the VAT.
Yeah, thank you for having us on the show and shining light on issues affecting young people. So we at Youth Capital, we think that we know that VAT is a regressive tax, and we think, the minister said that a tax like VAT is going to, it applies to everyone, but we know that it's going to hit different people differently. We are already a very unequal society, and we know that bearing, the brunt of this inequality, mostly it's young people and predominantly young Black women who are, struggling. And as we see with the unemployment numbers, 1 in 2 young people in this country do not work. And we do know that, a majority of those, they are Black and they are women. So we think that it's going to hit different people differently, and it's something that we do not welcome.
We've heard from some that it wouldn't necessarily affect the poorest of the poor. We're speaking to one political economist not so long ago, and he said, in fact, it will probably affect the middle class the most in this instance. That's the 0.5% increase.
So I think it's going to affect the poor. We already know with the recent household survey that came out that a majority of our South African households, I think it's 1 in 4, if I remember the numbers correctly, they are in between it's moderate or severe food insecurity. They are living through severe or moderate food insecurity. So already South African households are burdened, and young people coming from these households who are looking for work, who are looking for opportunities, are going to be hit hard by this.
You believe the expansion of the zero-rated goods would not help much?
If we are in a country where the minimum wage is 3,500 rand and the food basket costs around 5,000, so already South Africans are not affording. And as a campaign that advocates for policy change around youth unemployment, we think that there isn't enough, there isn't concrete solutions that are being brought forward to get out of the situation where we find ourselves in. Fiscal consolidation without prioritizing the needs of the people, the needs of young people, would not work, I think.
And then what of the decision to increase at least the social grants to be above inflation? Is that in any way alleviating some of the pressure on the very downtrodden or the poorest of the poor?
So in our work, we mostly engage with young people, and a lot of young people depend on the SRD grant. The SRD grant was not increased, and there's a VAT increase. So it means that the young people that depend on that 370 have to go into survive with that 370. So and while still living in this high levels of unemployment in an economy that's stagnant, that's not growing, and it's not producing enough jobs. So they rely on these grants, and that grant was not increased.
What would you have loved to hear from the finance minister now? Because some are still saying that there's been a significant reduction. It was first proposed that it would have been a 2%. It's moved to 0.5%, that it was a necessary increase in this respect. But what would you have preferred to hear from the finance minister?
So at Youth Capital, we think that there's other options that the minister could have explored. We don't think that actually, in actuality, the minister explored all of the other options in terms of how they can raise revenue for the fiscus. We think that there's other ways that they could have explored. We sit in the Budget Justice Coalition, and our colleagues there, different organizations there, have been advocating for different solutions that are not going to be a regressive tax on an overly taxed, nation already. So what we would have liked to hear, for example, is a concrete, solid plan in terms of, they talk about economic growth, but we've had years where there was economic growth, but that didn't yield into jobs for young people. So it would have been interesting to hear in terms of how are young people going to be brought into the conversation of economic growth? Like, how is that going to create jobs for them? What is the plan there? We don't think there's a deliberate plan to bring young people in. And also would have liked to see, a commitment, medium, to long-term commitment in terms of public employment programs that young people rely on. For example, we know that there's a contraction in the schools assistance program. We think that it's good that it's there on the list of items in the budget, but we know that there's a contraction. We're still studying the numbers. We're going to quantify what that contraction actually looks like. But we think some of these, are some of the ways that have been proven. When young people get jobs, we grow the tax base, they spend money back into the economy, and the economy grows. Unemployment, one is almost the single hand, one of the biggest contributors to inequality, poverty, so we think that we would have loved to hear a plan in terms of how we're going to eradicate unemployment, because just saying economic growth, that does not, sometimes the economy can grow and it's a jobless growth.
No, thank you very much for your insights there, Nape. That's Nape Senong from Youth Capital. He's an advocacy campaigner speaking to us and sharing his reaction to that budget speech delivered earlier today.